What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave and welcome to 2025. Hopefully everyone out there had a fun and safe New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, which, funny enough, the year started off now with a bang because we've had so far the biggest leak we've seen for the Switch 2, and I can't imagine Nintendo's very happy about the system's motherboard just now being out there in different images, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we're going to be talking about PlayStation Plus Essential that's now been announced for January, and it hasn't gone over well online, and it appears we could actually be seeing some work, some development happening behind the scenes for PlayStation 3 playing on some of Sony's current hardware, but how far off are we on that, really? So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below, and of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with a patent that was discovered once again online around Nintendo and their upcoming system. This, though, has to do with a familiar feature that we've talked about at length now with something like DLSS, but really just AI upscaling. You can see the patent here that was noticed, and this was actually updated pretty much at on December 31st. Some noticed it as the clock was chiming at midnight for 2025 to start. And this patent here is systems and methods for machine learned image conversion. So a computer system is provided for converting images through use of a trained neural network. It goes over several examples of things like a low resolution image of 540p being bumped up to, as an example, 1080p, which in turn you could also do, 1080p up to 4K. Again, things we've already heard of, and that's because this is an update to a previous patent that was then also an update to another previous patent. So this is something that's been updated consistently throughout the years for Nintendo, and it's what we would expect them to do since it's a feature we expect them to have ready to go as a major core component for their Switch 2 system, and it's something I assume they're going to show off just about right away in their next generation trailer or presentation that, well, based on a leak we're about to talk about here, I hope isn't too far off. Also, for all of you fans out there with something like Guitar Hero or Rock Band who have had a hard time finding guitars specifically for the Wii, I have some good news for you because it appears Hyperkin it's actually making new guitars, or they're sourcing new guitars. This is the listing right now posted up over on Amazon. This followed an announcement they made where we can see the Hyperkin Hyper Strummer Wii Guitar Controller Wireless Game Guitar compatible with Guitar Hero and Rock Band games. It's a great title there for a listing on Amazon. It's going to be released on July 8th, so next week. And currently they have it set on Amazon at the price of $76.99. Don't know if that's regional or something here for my end with Amazon Prime shipping or to the price. Either way, though, it's just under $80 from what they have here. It does exclude Rock Band 1 for compatibility. However, everything else, seemingly Guitar Hero and Rock Band games are good to go. And it does look like what you'd expect the older guitars to be for the Wii, where you have to still put the Wii remote in there and stuff. And I will admit, I was actually looking around for a Wii guitar like a few months ago, and it was tough to find one that was well priced or fairly priced and in good shape. So this is definitely more of a niche thing here that they're doing, but there's certainly a need for it as these guitars have completely shot up in price, mostly because of them just not being available in working condition or good enough condition. So at least now there is an option for at least a little while before these, I assume, sell out. Oh, and we did have an announcement for Tango Gameworks, one that's just more of like a formal thing since we already knew this was happening, but they have now made it official. We can see this over on their account where they say Tango Gameworks Studio has been reborn as Tango Gameworks Inc. or Incorporated, proudly joining Crafton Incorporated. We're excited to continue crafting games that bring joy to players around the world. Thank you for your continued support as we embark on this new journey. It was announced actually at 8 o'clock, December 31st, that night, just ahead again of the clocks turning over to 2025. And Tango Gameworks, we're expecting them to continue Hi-Fi Rush, so they should be making Hi-Fi Rush 2, as Crafton has said that they want to continue building up that franchise to be something really, really big. So as of now, clearly it's confined to the first Hi-Fi Rush, but let's say Hi-Fi Rush 2 builds on that and gets a little bigger, and then they have another sequel, and maybe they can merchandise, and they can even maybe branch out into other forms of media as we've seen streaming and movies become bigger and bigger for gaming. I think there's a lot of potential here for the Hi-Fi Rush franchise, and that's something I expect to see grow over the next couple of years here with Tango Gameworks. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Switch 2 and a massive leak, since now we have images, apparently, of the internals for the system. And I say apparently because technically it's not confirmed, but if this is a fake, it is a really, really good fake. It's something that would be incredibly difficult to create with AI or something for the imagery. It all lines up really well, even with some of the shipment data that was being tracked by message board like Famaboards, where they had a lot of the information that were pulled from shipping notices and stuff going back and forth for parts with Nintendo and other manufacturers. But now we can see this over on Reddit. This was like legitimately New Year's Eve, this gets posted up. I get an alert on my phone. People are going crazy. And I'm like, the ball is literally dropping right now. And it's MHN 1994 posted Switch 2 motherboard. That was it. And there are a couple of images here showing off a big shot of what looks to be the back of the Switch 2 motherboard. And then they have one of the main SoC along with some other chips, which appears to be the RAM around it there. And then there's some other chips that they also have images of, and even the game cartridge slot with a game in there, although it wouldn't shock me if that was just kind of like a test suite for QA, where they're just kind of going through different things, testing out aspects of it, whether it's with the Wi-Fi, maybe with the chip itself, temperatures, power draw, just different things that runs through to see and make sure everything is good to go for it to eventually be sold, for example. Now, there are several things we can take from these pictures. First, though, apparently MHN 1994 mentioned that they found these on Facebook, and then they reposted them to Reddit. So, all right, sure, we'll say Facebook coming through for this one. But looking up and down the board here, there are some things we can pull from it. Like, for example, we do have that extra USB-C port on top. So we have one on the bottom, one on the top, and I still wonder if that is a major aspect for Nintendo with this system. And it's something that for us right now, if you have any of the PC gaming handhelds, it's just basic. Like, okay, yes, you have at least one port, sometimes multiple USB-C ports on top, fast, they're high-speed ports, they can draw plenty of power for charging fast, anything there. I just wonder if Nintendo just has an idea, because it's a port you expect to be there, say, if you're a developer creating for the system, if that might be part of, say, a twist that Nintendo has for the system that they have not unveiled to us yet. Maybe different accessories or things that snap onto the top that add some extra functionality. Or maybe it is just as simple as, hey, if you have it in tabletop mode, now you have a place to plug in your charge cable so it can continue charging. Just drop a USB-C cable right on top, run it to the wall, and you'll be good to go while you're sitting there at the table playing it standing up with that big U kickstand that we're expecting. It's also a single cartridge slot, as there were some people wondering if they would have multiple cartridge slots to, say, work with backwards compatibility. No, it's about how I was expecting, where there'll be a single cartridge slot and you will have it aligned where the pin connector will support the current Switch cartridges and then also the new Switch 2 cartridges, which is very similar to like the 3DS to the DS. So all that to me checks out fine. Around the main SoC, there are two memory modules for RAM that we've pretty much figured out 6 gigabytes on each module, so a total of 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5X memory. And then right in the middle there, the main NVIDIA chip. But this has brought up quite the debate because it's not TSMC. It appears, just based on some of the identifying numbers, letters, and markings, that it's Samsung. Okay, so this seemed to throw a bit of a wrench into everyone's plans on many of these forums, Reddit, social media, as there was sort of this rising expectation that Nintendo would be going more cutting edge even than people were expecting with a 5-nanometer chip. Unfortunately, though, if it's Samsung, people are going, oh, wait a minute. This might actually be 8 nanometer, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that's 8 nanometer clearly, because NVIDIA used 8 nanometer back in 2020 with their Ampere video card line, and that would kind of line up with maybe the timetable Nintendo had with NVIDIA to develop this main chipset, especially if the chip was taped out years ago, as reports had kind of indicated. Now, there is also the potential this is a 5 nanometer chip. Okay, so that's kind of the back and forth right now. So much so that math and transistors are being discussed, and people are trying to measure out the die there with other things around it that they can get a relative like measurement from and then move it over, and they're doing like Photoshop measurements and stuff, which, look, it's fine. I mean, it's there. You might as well investigate it as much as possible. It just becomes a bit annoying when it turns into people kind of losing their mind over the idea of, wait, if this is 8 nanometers, it's over. It's going to be terrible. It's not going to be a very good system. It's not going to be very powerful. It's not going to do a lot in terms of being better than the current Switch, or I guess living up to the PS4. PS4 Pro seems to come up a lot with this system, but I would look at this as it's hard to compare not only the Switch, but also this new system for Nintendo, the Switch 2, to anything else other than the Switch now. And the reason for that is you don't really see any other hybrid systems out there that are designed to come with a dock and have two different power profile with different clock speeds that work just on the fly and are expected bare minimum by developers. And because of this, Nintendo working within these certain confines of it working handheld or docked, as well as being in a certain price point and having everything come in the box together, there are going to be sacrifices that are made for this system. And it's that thing that we've discussed here on this channel multiple times, where the expectations continue to rise the longer it takes for something like this to come out, that yeah, you may end up disappointed in one aspect, and that could be that it's 8 nanometers. Now, what does that mean for 95% of people out there who are hearing this? It will kind of depend on how you play your Switch now. Let's say you just play purely docked. You don't really care that much about it in handheld mode with battery life or fan speed or heat. Honestly, 8 nanometers isn't going to do that much to you. Like you're going to still play it in docked mode and most likely get DLSS or some kind of AI upscaling so that it looks significantly cleaner than what we have right now for the Switch, with that, which at times is incredibly rough. Now, in handheld mode, 8 nanometers would be less efficient than 4 or even 5 nanometers, so you would just get less battery life, and most likely the clock speeds would be lower to accommodate for a more inefficient chip, which, yes, means that you will just have less performance basically across the board, although it's maybe less noticeable in something like docked mode. I will say, though, looking at 12 gigabytes of DDR5X or low-power DDR5X, the biggest bottleneck that I hear right now from people who actually work on the system is memory bandwidth, and it seems to me like we're going to see memory bandwidth jump 3 to 4-fold, and that would be massive for developers with this system, especially going from that current Switch up to the newer one. Seems like that would be something that would completely open up for a lot of ports that maybe people weren't expecting to be able to go to the system once again. I don't think we're going to relive the days of all of a sudden Doom 2016 or Wolfenstein 2 or Witcher 3 popping up and blowing people's minds, but I think there will be some ports that do generally surprise people. And I still think there's something we're missing here with the Switch 2 because, well, it will be I would say significantly more capable and powerful system than the current Switch. There's still that little wrinkle that Nintendo typically shows up with that we don't really know about yet, so that's something else to keep in mind. But for now, just looking at the chip, looking at these images, nothing's really concrete when it comes to the size of the node with 5 nanometer, 4 nanometer, 8 nanometer, but we do now have a pretty good idea of the layout of the motherboard itself, the RAM, the cartridge slot, and that kind of thing. But really, Nintendo might want to think about announcing this thing soon, because at this point, everyone else wants to talk about it. Like all these partners at the factory level where they're manufacturing these things. We're seeing now at CES, like just this one, for example, is from Genki. And they go through this entire spiel about what they're going to be doing there. They'll be there for 4 hours. You meet the team at Genki, and their last sentence is, happy to discuss any Switch 2 info we may have, as well as the stuff we're making for it. Now, to me, that's a way to just get people to come out to your meet and greet to talk about your company and some of your accessories by just throwing the Switch 2 name out there. And that just seems to be a method that many developers, many studios are using in general for their games, if they're able to sneak it in there some way. So Nintendo may want to think about getting this thing announced sooner rather than later. I kind of feel like we're pretty close. I think we're a couple weeks off, to be honest, and that would be a good way to get things started with 2025. Start to remove some of the doubt that's now going around by just showing the games, because something tells me Nintendo will show up with some pretty impressive looking stuff on this Switch 2 hardware, even if it's this 8 nanometer NVIDIA Samsung created chip. I think it's still going to be pretty cool when it does get shown finally with something like a new big 3D Mario game. Next up, let's talk about PlayStation Plus Essential. These would be games going into the service on January 7th for, you guessed it, the month of January. And they announced this, and you know, I get why they did it, because let's face it, the game I'm about to show you as the big poster game, probably pretty cheap to get in there, but well, you can see it posted up. Yeah, it's Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Now there's the PlayStation 5 title as they showcase there. I thought it was hilarious when that popped up. It's like, wow, that was fast. But they are technically shutting down, not support, like the servers will still be up. You can still play the game and do all of that. That's fine. They're even adding a single player component to it. So it's fully set up that way if you just want to go through a new Arkham Batman experience, although not really playing as Batman or anything here, but still it's there, I guess, is the idea. But it's not, I think, a great game to have as the big, like, hey, check this out. We're kicking off 2025 with some big-time titles for PlayStation, and here's Suicide Squad. It's like, oh, thanks, PlayStation. We also have Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered. That's on PS4, which is a fun racing game. It is. And then the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, which is it's a very interesting game. I think it's a pretty cool game. I would recommend checking this one out because you're not going to get this experience literally anywhere else. So there you go. Stanley Parable. That is an easy recommendation to check out. The thing I will say about Suicide Squad, though, and just PlayStation Plus in general, this is kind of like that idea of Saints Row went into the service, and it was hilarious because that's a terrible game. But it's also like, well, I wasn't going to buy the game, but now it's kind of just there in the service. Maybe I'll try it out. And that is sort of one of the benefits of these subscription services. It's like you're going to get a game to play that you weren't going to buy, but now you can kind of try it out. Just see what you think. And okay, maybe that's the silver lining here. It's Suicide Squad. No one was really going to buy it anymore, but now it's just there and you just click download and you can try it out for yourself and, let's face it, probably play it and move on after about an hour or so. But hey, Stanley Parable, go ahead and try that one out. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PlayStation 3 games potentially working on the PlayStation 5, maybe PlayStation 6 natively, not through cloud streaming, which is how we're playing it now, which it is frustrating to have that as part of the PlayStation Plus premium service. Hey, here's Resistance through the cloud. It's like, oh, great. All right, sure. Thanks, Sony. But now we could be seeing maybe the wheels turning here a bit more with Implicit Conversions, who does the Syrup engine, which is one of the main ways that Sony is now doing PlayStation 2 titles natively with all kinds of really cool enhancements on the PlayStation 5, which you can see this over on Implicit Conversions website, where they have Dreaming About. So this is their section just for things they're doing, their roadmaps. They have Dreaming About, In Progress, Released, and on the left side, the one thing they have right now that they've added is PlayStation 3 Emulator, researching and prototyping the possibility of a PlayStation 3 emulator package for Syrup. Now, the thing I will point out here about this is they are not, like, exclusively tied to Sony. As in, hey, it's not just about us developing for PlayStation Plus Premium. They do a lot of stuff when it comes to their emulators, even for just like full game releases that happen away from PlayStation. Like, as an example, their in progress right now is Pancake on Nintendo Switch. That is their PS1 emulator, Pancake, on Nintendo Switch. Also doing it for Xbox Series X. So again, this is stuff that does work just outside of these PlayStation Plus premium offerings. That said, them developing and figuring out how to get PlayStation 3 emulation set up as a package for Syrup would be a very compelling pitch to Sony, wouldn't it? Because they're already working with them. They're labeled as a PlayStation partner on their website, and we've seen the results of that so far with what I think are really well done PS2 emulation titles for PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. And I've wondered when Sony would think about PS3 games on their platforms natively. The idea of it being PlayStation 6, because they're still kind of hampered with the CPU on the PS5, certainly on the PS4, but on the PS5, I don't necessarily buy that as much, but I understand I don't think it would work on the PS4. That has to go away at some point, and then maybe the PS3 stuff starts to really spin up. But in the meantime, if Implicit Conversions can figure out how to get it in Syrup and it runs well enough, that might be the pitch to Sony to get them that contract as well. That's kind of how I'm viewing it here, as they have it in Dreaming About, research, prototyping, stuff that's well off in the distance. So I don't think this is something you would see pop up in the next year, even 2 years, But to me, like, it's kind of being set up now as maybe the end of this generation going into PlayStation 6. Sony finally figures out how to get PS3 games released and designed through emulation natively on PlayStation hardware, and well, I'd like to see that future actually unfold, and the fact that we're seeing this now does give me some hope for that one, because those server blades that are playing PS3 games right now for us to stream to our systems, they're only going to last so long, and I have to imagine Sony knows that too. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which will start with one of the Game of the Year madness that happened over New Year's, which we can see. Dragon Quest III HD2D took down Frostpunk 2. It was very decisive. Kind of, I mean, I sort of expected that, but still 83% for Dragon Quest III HD2D. And then yesterday, we had Silent Hill 2 take down SteamWorld Heist 2. That was 84% for Silent Hill 2. So things continue to roll along here with Game of the Year madness. The most recent couple of matchups, those were pretty straightforward, very predictable, but I think we'll have a few upsets coming up here pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Plasma, who says, we need AMD and Intel to step it up to force NVIDIA's prices down. I've heard that line for years now, specifically for AMD, and now Intel's kind of thrown in there too. Intel just recently came out with a new video card that's kind of in that mid-range, that more budget-oriented pricing, and it's actually done well. Like, a lot of the reviewers really like the card. It can play Indiana Jones because it doesn't lack VRAM, like we've seen NVIDIA kind of be a little bit stingy with the VRAM, and now they're kind of they're feeling that a bit with some of these recent games that are just like VRAM hungry. So because of that, I see Intel maybe kind of setting themselves up nicely in that mid-range tier. But you're right about kind of the top tier stuff. It's NVIDIA is kind of alone, and they keep pushing that market pricing up, and I think we're going to see it once again here pretty soon at CES, and it's unfortunate. I would like to see AMD get back to where they were. It might just be ATI days when they were really up against NVIDIA, and NVIDIA was kind of getting slapped around there a bit, and eventually they got things figured out, got back on top, and they've just been cruising ever since. But you're right. We need that heavy competition, and we need it soon for the video card space. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed the last Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see some of my 2025 gaming predictions, which, yes, does include Half-Life 3. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.